What if I told you the biggest secret of all is that we're living inside of a machine? Sounds pretty crazy, doesn't it? Philosophers, shaman, authors, and filmmakers have all been able to tap into the sacred gnosis that is waiting to be unlocked inside each one of us. However, it wasn't until the birth of computers and AI that we as a humanity finally had the language necessary to not only understand the digital nature of reality, but even more so, to communicate it. But just like any other computer system, this reality can and has been infected with a virus that has not only created imbalance in reality, but even more so within the human consciousness itself. But what if the developers left an antivirus program that could be accessed from within the machine in the event that consciousness becomes trapped in its own creation? Could the virus be removed from the system? And even more so, could the system itself be reset? In this film, we will detail the digital nature of this reality as we've come to understand it. We will detail the nature and origins of this virus and how it has embedded itself into the human consciousness through fear, how it feeds on child sacrifice, and how this ancient practice is still being performed to this day as a global child trafficking network run by the elite. We will shine a light on the rituals they perform in public and those hidden in the deepest, darkest layers. And finally, we will take you to Egypt to witness ayahuasca ceremonies performed at the Temple of Hatshepsut, at the Temple of Isis and Philae. We will take you into the subterranean chamber and into the Queen's Chamber of the Great Pyramid, both of which have been off limits to the public for decades. And finally, we will step into the sarcophagus of the King's Chamber to launch our consciousness into the 13th density to unlock these antivirus programs. Our intention was simple: reset the Matrix. The events of this film took place in May of 2018. We returned with the countdown clock, 4 minutes and 37 seconds, or in Matrix time, 4 years and 7 months. Had we created this film upon returning, it would be very easy to write off these experiences as one of the most epic psychedelic experiences in the history of mankind. However, as we find ourselves in the middle of a worldwide shutdown in the year 2020, exactly at the halfway point of our countdown clock, there is no denying the Matrix is being reset. Are these events merely a series of massive coincidences? Or was this the fulfillment of an ancient plan to reset the Matrix? Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm skipping the regular intro because that one was kind of long, but I wanted to promote the film project that I'm working on, Resetting the Matrix, and that will be available hopefully in the coming few months. I mean, I'm really working towards the countdown clock to get that information out to you and to get the book written and everything like that, because I feel like my time here is starting to dwindle down, and I think I might have maybe 2 years years tops. And it's kind of funny because it coincides with the intro, the countdown clock of December 2022. The thing is, though, other people are feeling this as well. So I'm not the only one. I received a Facebook message. I had it on my screen earlier. It was actually a public comment, though. I did a video last night about this, but I figured I'd just go ahead and do a live stream with everybody today. But this comment said, "Hey, I've been having these dreams that I'm about to die. And I'm perfectly fine with it." And I said, you know what? Me too. I said, all of us are being called home right now. And the reason we're being called home is, I think, because the matrix is being shut down. It's being reset. And a lot of us are needed on the other side. This isn't something to be sad about. It's not something to be concerned about. And it's most definitely not a Kool-Aid drinking type of deal. It's just, you know, when you know, you know. And so it's all winding down. And what I want to do is leave a good body of work for people after I'm gone. In the event that the matrix continues to go, other people can use the work to help find themselves a way out. But in this particular video, I wanted to just kind of outline everything that we've been talking about on Beyond the Veil in one simple format. We've seen some new people come to the channel, and some of the comments that I'm reading, a lot of people have a lot of questions about a lot of stuff. And the thing is, the stuff we talk about on Beyond the Veil here, this is like the advanced level stuff. This is like the university post-grad information. I don't expect it to resonate with very many people, and I see a lot of people that are new on their journey, and obviously they haven't been following along with us for the last several years. So there's a lot of information, even our regular listeners, that we may have skipped over. And the thing is, our show here on Beyond the Veil, it's not really a show, but it's more of a gathering place for our team to hang out, talk about what's going on, learn from each other. And so it's all I can't remember the term I'm looking for, but it's all episodic. That's the term I'm looking for. It's all episodic when it comes down to it, and it's easy to get lost in the vast amount of information. So I wanted to start from the very beginning, the system map of the reality that we live in, and at the end, I'm going to elaborate a little bit more on this countdown timer and why I feel that we and several other people are getting the message that it's time to go home. Now, I also want to look at the flip side, because one of my big philosophies here on Beyond the Veil is that we have to, whenever we come across a certain piece of information, a certain gnosis, we have to have the ability to take that information and flip it upside down and look at it from the complete and total opposite perspective. Because if we don't, then we're just falling for whatever deception out there that there is, and we're not using our discernment. And discernment is the key when dealing with a lot of this information. And a lot of this information here is specifically based for, oh, I see we're getting some really generous donations in the chat room. Thank you very much for that. I'll get to the donations a little bit later, if that's okay, because I'm by myself and I don't have Cherie to carry it on for me. But the information here on Beyond the Veil is targeted towards a very specific consciousness type. I'm going to elaborate on the two different types of consciousness that exist within the Matrix as well. But needless to say, to sum it up, let me just say that. To sum it up, there are two specific types of consciousness: organic consciousness and what I've referred to as non-player character consciousness. So I'm going to explain that as well. We're going to get into the artificial intelligence, the above artificial intelligence, the below artificial intelligence. And the comment that really sparked this is somebody, and he seemed, I could tell the energy was a little bit frantic. And he said, "Oh my God, I don't understand what's going on. What's all this computer simulation? What does that do to God? What does that do to Jesus, etc., etc.?" And I was like, "All right, so we have some new people that have come across our channel that are still at those first levels, those initial levels, and so I want to also explain a little bit about God, about Jesus, about religion, about the Holy Scriptures." And so on and so forth. So I'm hoping to encompass a good amount. For one of the first times, I took the opportunity to go ahead and write notes out so I can go everything systematically. And a lot of the new people that have come to the channel is thanks to JCK, who has just been blowing up the internet. I just got off the phone with her a little while ago, and she's having some awesome revelations. I'm not going to reveal anything that we talked about, but she is going to post some new videos with some new information that I think you're going to find very interesting. Now, I do want to say that I do not resonate 100% with anybody's information. There's a lot of things that JC talks about that I don't agree with. There's a lot of things that George Kavassalis talks about that I don't agree with. Because when I have to agree with something, I have to either feel it or see it for myself. And the most powerful thing for me is when I'm able to see it for myself. And more importantly, it becomes even more powerful when I see it in my own visions and my own experiences. Then I read about it in an ancient book, or an article pops up, or something like that. It's just so much more powerful for me. But just because I don't agree with the information doesn't mean that I can't respect my friends 100% and love my friends 100%. I consider George Kavassalis to be a very, very, very dear friend. JC, she felt very ancient to me, like on a soul level. As soon as I saw her, which was a couple of years ago, actually. And we never really got to talking too much for various reasons, but now she's put herself out there, and I think she's doing a phenomenal job. But there is a lot of new age stuff that is kind of out there, and I try to remove myself from the new age stuff, and I think it's just simply the perspective of the type of consciousness that I am. From the other side, I mean, I've come into this machine as a programmer, and this actually came up in the conversation with JC, and there are various types of consciousness that exist outside of the matrix. I may be getting ahead of myself, but there's the programmers, the technicians, there's those that are more technical, there's those that are more magical, spiritual, there's those that are physical, there's those that are warriors. There's several different types of consciousness, and the thing is, on the other side, again, I feel like I'm getting ahead of myself, but on the other side, in the real world, outside of the simulation, there's a hierarchy. But the hierarchy doesn't work based on the aspiration of power as it does here in this matrix. People don't run for president. People don't run for this. People don't run for that. The energies just naturally resonate at the frequencies where they resonate. And there's an understanding between everybody, the warriors and the mages and the wise ones and the mystics and all that, however you want to label all of those different consciousness. And at the center point of this is the leading energies, which in my humble opinion are represented by Isis and Osiris. So Isis and Osiris, they don't aspire to be Isis and Osiris. They don't aspire to be the king and the queen. However, and metaphorically speaking, of course, but however, they just naturally resonate at those frequencies. So those around them naturally resonate at those frequencies, and everything works harmoniously. As opposed to where we are right now in this matrix, where it's just like survival of the fittest and battle for most power and control of everything, as we've seen in our political system. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The reason that I outline this first and foremost, though, is to help you understand the matrix that we live in. Now, it's very simple. We live in a computer simulation. It's a simulated reality. There is physical and spiritual evidence to back this up. String theory is the study of how when you zoom in on an organism and go into the deeper layers, the DNA, you go into the atomic structure, you keep on zooming in and zooming in and zooming in, and everything is based on these little strings, and these little strings are all codes. Well, when you look at a picture, and you zoom in on a picture, what happens is, it doesn't matter how high the resolution of the picture is, you zoom into a certain point and you start to see the pixels of the picture itself. So string theory really is the study of the pixels that make up reality and the fabric of reality itself. And one of the key things for me that really just locked this whole computer system idea in place for me is a work by a man called Professor Gates and Professor Sylvester Gates. It's funny, we have Bill Gates on one side and then we have Sylvester Gates on the other side. There's all kinds of Gates, ladies and gentlemen, all kinds of gates we got to break through. But as he was examining string theory, he actually found a computer code within string theory itself. Now, for most people know what computer code is in 2020. They know how complex it is. It's not just like you look at a cloud and then your brain just automatically starts to make different shapes out of the clouds that are familiar to your brain. He found a self-correcting computer code within string theory that was written by a guy named Claude Shannon in the 1940s. Now, for me, that just sealed it. He also has another set of data where he took all of his data and he put it into a computer system and spat out a graphical interface. That graphical interface is called adinkras, and I may pull one up on the screen here, but it's not too important. But these adinkras look exactly like hyperspace. I mean, when you take a large amount of DMT, when you take a large amount of ayahuasca and you break through the ego, you break through everything that's inside and you actually get into the system itself, it looks like the adinkras. And I'm asking myself, why is it that he's taken his information as a scientist, as a string theorist and a physicist, and he's putting this information into a computer and it's spitting out basically the exact same type of geometrical patterns and shapes that we see in hyperspace. So connecting all of these dots together brought me to the realization that, hey, we are living inside of a computer simulation. Now, we have unique language for the first time in this time period that we're living in, where we can say computer, we can say program, we can say artificial intelligence. But the ancients had their own language. So when we read these ancient texts and look in these ancient books, we've come to find that realistically what they're talking about is the exact same thing that we're talking about. We're seeing it in our own visions, and when we go within in the ayahuasca realm, DMT realm, so on and so forth, they just didn't have the language to communicate it in the way that we have the language to now. Now, does that mean that we live inside of an actual computer system, like an alienware? That's interesting. We live in an alienware computer, like an Alienware that I have sitting down here. No, this computer system is much more complex. This computer system is built upon digits, zeros and ones, computer script. It's also built upon an organic matter. It's also built upon a spiritual matter as well. We infused a spirit into the computer system itself. The best way to communicate that is artificial intelligence. But going back to the different types of consciousness that exist outside, the warrior class and the mage class and all that I just mentioned, there was a piece and essence that went into this computer system to create that creates this matrix. But all of those consciousness got together and contributed their own information to creating this reality, which is why it's part organic, it's part zeros and ones, it's part spiritual. So when you hear the idea that Gaia or Mother Earth is a living, breathing organism, it is true to a certain degree, but at the same time, it's also a computer simulation because it's based on organic matter and it's based on computer code as well. So I think we can bridge the gap and clear things up, in that regard there. Now, the system that we live in, it's made up of zeros and ones, and you can find these codes everywhere. You look in the DNA, and in the DNA, you have a series of zeros and ones. Then the RNA takes that data and transcribes that into proteins, into amino acids, into all the different things that the body needs. But at the core of it, you have the zeros and ones within the DNA. The DNA data is kind of like a raw programming data that can be used, it can be taken, it can be hijacked, it can be turned into some other type of code as well. It's almost like the God particle of creation. Like if you had like a particle, I'm not talking about like the CERN God particle, but a different type. It's like a blank slate, and you can take that data and you can turn that data into anything, which is why there's been such a push to try to get different DNAs from people. As a matter of fact, JC and I were just talking about how they're going after the indigenous DNA. Again, I don't want to reveal too much about what we talked about because she's going to talk about it in her video. But there's a program to find and access all these different DNA types that are out there. And I suspected this several years ago when I was looking at the Palestine situation, and I was looking at it from a less awareness, but my awareness was still stuck in somewhat of a religious type of thing. And I was thinking to myself, why is it that they've quarantined Palestine so much? What are they doing? It seems like they're looking for a particular bloodline that's going to come out of Palestine. So they've just locked Palestine up completely, and then tying into the whole Jesus thing, et cetera, et cetera. So there was a thought pattern like that at one point in time, but then more understanding came in, and more understanding about the Holy Scriptures and all of that. So I guess at the very core of it, everything is zeros and ones. Everything in the Matrix is a program as well. I mean, you turn on TV, what do you have? You have television programming. You go to school, you have school programs. You turn on the news, you have news programs. Everything is a program. I mean, it's like, it's constantly, everything from the outside world is constantly coming into our brain, because everything in the Matrix is based on code, and everything in the Matrix is based on programming. The brain itself is like a computer processor. So it's processing internal code outwards, and then it's processing external code inwards. So sight, smell, touch, so on and so forth is all being processed by the brain. But at the core of it, we're dealing with nothing but a series of zeros and ones at the end of the day. And by understanding that we're dealing with zeros and ones, then we can better understand how these things that seemed paranormal, they seemed mystical, they seemed like witchcraft and so on and so forth at some point in time, now all of a sudden start to make sense, and why there's been such a demonization of these types of understandings. Because those who demonize these type of understandings are the ones who seek to control you with those type of understandings. It's like having a bunch of guys with guns, pointing them at you and telling you how bad guns are and how you shouldn't have a gun. And it's like, well, wait a minute, you're using that against me. I should also understand how to use one against you too if you want, but it's witchcraft, it's Satanism, it's all these different things. It's the inversion. Again, more conversation that I was having with JC, the inversion of everything. And so what happened is, and I'm getting a little bit off track from my notes here, but what happened is throughout the course of time, the Crusades, this is a separate conversation I was having with somebody just a couple days ago, the Crusades, the conquistadors, all of these people from history, they've systematically gone to every land and they've tried to exterminate the indigenous people. And JC has some really interesting information about the Australian indigenous people. But I'm more focused here on the native indigenous people, because obviously I'm native myself too, or my avatar is native. I caught myself slipping there. My avatar is native. But they've systematically gone through. They've killed all the indigenous people. They've taken the knowledge for themselves. And it's not just indigenous people who are brown. This also is like the Celts. This is anybody with a spiritual practice. They went around and they imposed Christianity and made everything else blasphemy, and called everything else witchcraft, Satanism, so on and so forth. It's all an attack on the divine feminine, which I didn't put in my notes here, but it's worth getting into at some point as well. But they've taken that and they've essentially hid it in the Vatican Library. I mean, the Vatican Library, I think, is full of all of this information, and they're constantly casting spells upon our consciousness. Well, you think of spell casting and go, oh, that's hokey, hocus pocus, stuff like that. But when you think about it from a computer or programming perspective and understand that we live in a matrix, we understand that we live in a system of zeros and ones, then we understand what they're actually doing is they're manipulating the code. They're sending different programs into the brain. That's why mind control programs work. MK Ultra, for example, I think everybody's familiar with MK Ultra, but that's why it comes into the brain, and you can program the brain to do certain things. And it's the lack of awareness in certain people that allows the programming to set in. And everything is a program, including our identities right here and right now. Chris Geo is just a program that I'm running because I have to run the program because I'm here inside of the matrix, and it's the only way that I can operate within the matrix. Is we all have to have a program. We all have to have an identity. We all have to have an ego. Now, what happens is as we grow up, we are programmed by the external world, not by who we are, but by the external world as soon as we come in. We're told that boys are supposed to play with guns, girls are supposed to play with dolls. We're told that boys watch sports, girls do cheerleading, so on and so forth. There's school spirit, there's team spirit, there's all these different programs, Republican, Democrat, all these different programs. And by the time we get out of the school program and we graduate from all of our schooling, now we have this programmed identity from what they have told us that we're supposed to be in life. And a lot of the programming is Hollywood programming too. I mean, you see the television programming where it's all about glitz and glamour and, all of this stuff. Even in when I grew up in Houston, Texas, it was all about bling. It was all about 84s, it was all about all that. I'm probably dating myself by saying that. However, there are all these programs, but at some point we can break those programs. And when we break those programs, then what happens is we deprogram ourselves from all of our experiences. I mean, even our traumas are the biggest programs that we go through. And I like to use an extreme example, so forgive me if I'm offending anybody out there with this extreme example. But think about like one of these really diehard man-hating feminists that just are like, disgusting people, and just they hate the world, they hate men, they hate everything around them. A lot of that comes from some kind of childhood trauma, childhood programming. And so they've taken that and they've stuck to that, and they forged an entire identity based upon that trauma. And so what happens is then they're operating from that program. So a man hurt them in the beginning of their life, or when they were young. So now they hate all men as a result. So you see how those connect right there. That event has now programmed the individual to react like this, and it carries on throughout your entire lifetime. If you've had a childhood abuse, for example, like I have, I think most of us have. My dad used to beat the shit out of me. I realized in the ayahuasca realm that I was tied to a lot of that trauma and a lot of those experiences, and I didn't even know it. I was reacting in certain ways. There were certain triggers implanted within my consciousness based upon those experiences. And when I went into the ayahuasca realm, I was able to break those programs down by understanding them and seeing them in front of me and breaking the tethers that bind. But everything in the Matrix is a program. Now, we can take some of those programs and we can see them as positive and say, hey, you know what? I had a really great experience with birds. I love birds. I want to take care of birds, and that's a really good experience. So you can hold on to those. But when you deprogram your ego, when you break down all of those programs, what happens is then you become the master of your own identity. And instead of letting the Matrix program you through all your traumas and fears and experiences and all of this, now you decide on what programs you want to keep within your avatar identity and which ones you want to let go of. And for me, it was really, really powerful to be able to come to this, and it's a never-ending process. I mean, if you're inside of a computer system and you're inside of a body, which is essentially a computer itself, it's a computer program. Your brain is a computer processor, and it's necessary for you to be inside of that body and have that brain in order to process the zeros and ones that are coming from the external world, and to be able to navigate through this world. Well, you're going to be bombarded by programs no matter what, no matter how much ego dissolving you've done, no matter any of that. It's going to be program after program after program. But you can start to recognize the programs more and more and more. And then we come to a point to where I'm going all through. I'm skipping through all my notes here. I haven't even touched upon any of my notes. I guess we'll jump into consciousness real quick. You come to the realization that there's a driver in this avatar. There's a driver. And that driver existed before it entered this avatar. So this is what I call raw consciousness, RA consciousness, raw consciousness. I'll explain what that means in a second. And also raw as in unfiltered, unrefined. It's just the state that it was before it came into this matrix. And from that point, some people call it the heart center. I would say that the heart center is a gate Yes, the heart space, that's one way to put it, but this is beyond the heart space. This is going to the driver of what's inside of your avatar. And when you go to that place, it's as if we have all of the information that we could ever need, that we could ever know, because on the other side of this matrix, we're ultimately infinite beings. So as infinite beings, we also have infinite knowledge. We also have infinite understanding. And I believe that one of the reasons that we created this matrix to begin with is because we wanted to experience the one thing that we couldn't experience before, which was being finite. We didn't have a beginning or an end. So we created a beginning and an end. We created a game that we can play that starts and finishes. And it's something completely new. But in order to play the game, we had to come in and wipe ourselves. Or it's not really a wipe, it's more of an overlay. There's an overlay. So we can come into the game and play the game and have fun playing this game. But there exists something underneath that overlay, and that's all the information that we have as infinite beings. And that's what I call tapping into our raw consciousness. Now, the difference between the New Age idea of Christ consciousness and the idea of raw consciousness is based upon the experience that I went through personally, which is I lit up just like a light, like boom, I was vibrating so high. I was walking around. People were just wanting to hug me. They were like, oh my God, I don't know what's going on with you, but your energy's so good. Oh, and they were just wanting to be around my energy. And this was after like a 15-day ayahuasca ceremony. I mean, we went hardcore, we went deep. The problem is that it doesn't last. So the pendulum has to swing the other way. Boom! I didn't realize the pendulum swung the other way. I thought it was a state that you were supposed to achieve and get to. And when I fell and I hit myself so hard, I went into the opposite. I was vibrating really high. Then all of a sudden I was vibrating pretty low. Then after so many more experiences and understanding, I realized, no. That's a trap. That's a carrot dangling in front of the horse. That's meant to set you up for failure. Because when we were vibrating at such a high frequency, sure, everybody was gravitating towards us, but we were having a very difficult time operating within the matrix itself. And we are here in this matrix. So how do you operate at a frequency outside of the matrix while at the same time being in the matrix? It's a paradox. It's paradoxal. It's not supposed to be like that. And I realized that during this journey of deprogramming, during this journey of ascension, during this journey of enlightenment, of elevation, it's okay if you fall. It's okay if you backtrack. It's okay if you scrape your knee, and it's okay if you hit your head on the ground, because that's part of it. You're not supposed to exist in this higher frequency state 24 hours a day. Instead, what you're supposed to be able to do is access that state. Access that state, retrieve information from that state, and bring it back here. Now, the reason that I called it raw consciousness, RA consciousness, is because throughout my journey, what I found is that it was a series of activations or unlocking. Let's just put it like that. Like unlocking is a better way, because again, we're whole and we come into this matrix and we purposely go from being whole to being overlaid so we can experience this game. But the consciousness still exists. We still exist within the highest possible state. There is no ascension in the terms of New Age, upgrading and this and that, et cetera, not for raw consciousness, not for organic consciousness. I'll talk about the other consciousness here in a second. But that doesn't exist. Instead, it's the opposite for us, because we start from here and come to here. Then the process that I went through was unlocking different aspects of my consciousness, which I found to be very symbolic and resonating with the Egyptian pantheon. It's like you have Isis and Osiris, okay, Egyptian pantheon, representative of the divine masculine and divine feminine. Now, there's other aspects as well, which are like subcategories of the divine feminine, divine masculine, et cetera, but at the core of this, at the very center is the Isis and Osiris, divine feminine, divine masculine. The purpose and point, in my opinion, is to unlock those, balance those out, unlock all the other ones. You know, there was a Sekhmet, there was an Anubis, there were several others. And again, these were energies that I kind of ascribed to the Egyptian pantheon. And ascribed is not a good word, that I used metaphorically, or I found metaphor within the Egyptian pantheon, and I realized the Egyptian pantheon was actually a representation of consciousness itself, and how consciousness has so many different aspects to it. And once we unlock all of those different aspects, then we become the raw consciousness. Raw is the one that's above everybody, so we become the raw consciousness. And then I realized as I went through this deprogramming process that it was also the raw RAW consciousness. But this realization didn't come until I realized that we're dealing with two very specific types of consciousness within the matrix. We're dealing with what I've termed organic consciousness. And organic consciousness exists outside of this system, outside of the computer simulation that we live in. It's like a video game and somebody that's holding a controller. It's somebody that's actually holding a controller. But what fun would a video game be if it was all just people holding controllers? Most video games out there, I think there was a one that was released, I think it was like Fallout or something like that, and it was one of the first games that existed without non-player characters, and they said it was the most boring game. You've got to have non-player characters within a video game, characters that are manifested by the simulation in order to push the game forward. So you have non-player characters, shopkeepers, upgrades, guides, people that give you upgrades, guides. You have a hierarchical structure as well. You've got the bosses, you've got the enemies, you've got all that, and all of these people we encounter are there to help push the game forward and to make the game fun. Now, what I've determined is that organic consciousness is way outnumbered by non-player characters. So the majority of people out there are most likely non-player characters. And I'll tell you why the non-player characters was so revealing to me. Well, I guess I'll just go ahead and go into that right now. But when I realized, let me backtrack for a second. There was an ayahuasca experience where I was walking around and I saw light in some people and no light in others. And I'm like, what am I looking at? What is this? And I mean, this was after like a 4 or 5 day ceremony. And then I was looking at some of the New Age articles and people who were speaking at the time. This was like 2013, 2014. And other people were starting to notice this too. Now, they may have not seen it in the exact same way that I've seen it, but they used to call them back then empty containers. And the premise is that there was an evacuation, possibly because Nibiru was coming through, and a lot of the consciousness itself was evacuated. So we have body computers just walking around and just, without a driver in them, and they're just running out their programs because their consciousness has been evacuated. But that didn't really resonate too much. But what happened is I started looking into some of the ancient books. I started looking in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. And Thoth talked about two distinct types of consciousness. He talked about the children of men and the children of light. I remember reading Helena Blavatsky, who was demonized by the truther community, consequently, and I was like, oh my God, who's this? I remember at the beginning. Then I actually read her stuff, and I was like, a lot of this I really resonate with. Some of it, and it's bullshit. With everybody, like everybody, I read or I listen to, I'm like, I resonate with some of this, but some of this is bullshit. You're probably feeling the same way about what you're hearing here, and you know what? I would say that's a good thing. That's the way you should be. If you're listening to somebody and you're like, oh my God, I resonate 100%, I would take a step back and look at myself in the mirror and ask myself, am I really thinking for myself? Because if I'm resonating with somebody 100%, that means that I'm not really using my critical thinking here, and I'm not discerning information. So I think discernment and critical thinking is of the utmost importance. So if you resonate 80% with what I say, right on. I think you're on the right track. 80, 90%, something like that. And that goes for anybody out there. So back to Helena Blavatsky. I was reading Blavatsky, and she talks about those with the divine spark and those without. And I'm like, hey, wait a minute, that's really interesting. I'm starting to, I just recognize two types of consciousness in this machine. She's also talking about two different types of consciousness too. So I go back and I look at the Gnostics. The Gnostics talk about the psychics and the helics. The psychics were the ones that had the divine spark, and the helics were the ones that were not. The hillocks belonged to this machine. The psychic came from outside. Wait a minute. Whoa, that's crazy. That's the exact same thing I've been seeing in the ayahuasca realm. I just called it organic consciousness and non-player character. You look at every book, even the Bible talks about the children of men and the sons of men and men, makes a distinction of the two. Two distinct different types of consciousness almost everywhere you turn. Dolores Cannon, who unfortunately she passed away right after we interviewed her. We interviewed her for 1 hour. She was such a sweet lady. We interviewed her for an hour, but come to find out afterwards, she talks about background people and how a lot of the people that we see are just simply background people in our own reality. And I thought, wow, that's interesting. There's another person. And when I started putting this out there, more and more people were saying, hey, look at here, look at here, look at here, look at here. And it all culminated into a gnosis that, yeah, there are two different types of consciousness. But the powerful thing of understanding that there are two different types of consciousness is that when you encounter a non-player character, you don't have to get a bloody head from banging your head against the wall trying to show them your perspective. When we first come into this understanding and awakening, we think that it's our duty to wake everybody up. And I realize that's silly. It's an impossible task. We're not supposed to wake everybody up because not everybody has the ability to wake up. Instead, what it did is it for me personally, it was very energetically calming, because now I know that person in my family who's diehard religion and running that religious program, and no matter what I say in the face of all evidence, in the face of everything, they're never going to be able to see my perspective. They're always going to think I'm a Satanist. They're always going to think this, or always going to think that, et cetera, because they're running that program and they don't have a consciousness inside of them that they can tap into. They must run a program by the very nature of who they are. So then what happened in my own family is the dynamic started to change. Now, instead of me trying to convince them of everything that I know, I just started to love them for who they are. And I started to understand when I go into the space with this person, I'm going to hear their programming over and over and over again. And it has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with what I think. It has nothing to do with what I feel, nothing to do with what I believe. But rather, it has to do with the fact that they are merely running a program. So it made the world so much better from my perspective. And that's one of the reasons why I talk about non-player characters. I talk about organic consciousness. And when we first started talking about this back in 2016, 2017, we didn't coin the term non-player consciousness, but we were the first ones to use it, or non-player characters, because that actually comes from video games. But we were the first ones to use it in relation to consciousness. And then it just kind of took off after that. I remember, there were all these NPC memes and, all of that. Clyde Lewis had us on talking about NPCs and so on and so forth. And so it's pretty amazing to see an idea like that originate from here beyond the veil and then spread outwards so quickly into the masses out there. But living in harmony with non-player characters, living in harmony with the world around us was the number one realization of the non-player character realization. But when we first started talking about it, people always saw the non-player character as an adversary. But realistically, it's not. My mother, I believe, was a non-player character. She was an NPC. She was like a protector, guardian program. She was there to teach me a lot of what was going on. And I remember, one of the things that really got me is she always told me that she wanted to be buried in Greece. She wanted her ashes scattered over the oceans in Greece. And that was a promise that I made to her entire life. But at the end of her life, when she knew she was going to die, she said, I don't want that. I want to be buried in the church, in the way of the church, because the church will not give me a Greek Orthodox burial if I'm cremated. So I want my body pumped up with a bunch of chemicals. I want to be put into a stone box. I want to be put into a wooden box after that. And I want the wooden box to be put into the stone box. And I want to be buried 6 feet underground. Why? Because of the religious programming that I've been running my entire life. And no matter what, she was always stuck to her programs. And, the poor lady had cancer twice in her life. And I kept telling her, Mom, you have to try some cannabis. It's going to help so much with the cancer. She was so proud of herself for never, ever, ever touching drugs after being pumped up with chemotherapy. There was nothing I could say to convince her otherwise, nothing I can do, nothing like that. But I realized after the fact, when I realized that, I realized how special she was, because she was there to show me infinite love. She was there to show me divine feminine aspects of consciousness. She was there to show me caring and nurturing and so on and so forth. So I appreciate that very much from her. So they're not adversarial. They can be adversarial, but they're not adversarial. They're guides, they're helpers. They're people that help move the game forward. So, wow, a lot, a lot going on there. I'm going to try to get to my notes here, because we've really just gone in so many different directions. So, this computer system that we live in, as I said, is made up of an organic matter, but at the same time zeros and ones, and at the same time a spiritual, quote-unquote, magic, for lack of a better term. So it's all of these three things combined. There's a centralized brain, and the centralized brain is called the Aten. That's the main computer processor, the Aten. And it exists in the real world. I've seen it. It exists in this room with these red curtains, and it's got this light, kind of like shining. I know you can't see it on the camera, but kind of like I have that light shining down behind Cherie. And you can see it much more vibrantly. The camera doesn't pick it up as well. But on other shows, if you've seen it, it's a light like that, and this thing floats. And it floats over this platform. And there's three other brains connected to it as well. These are pink. The Aten is blue. And it looks like it's metallic, and it looks like a brain, but it has like these little kind of wing type things to it. And that's sitting on it's floating on a platform. That's connected to three other brains, and those brains are pink. And they're connected by this fiber optic laser type of beam. Because that's how information is transferred. Information is transferred with light. That's why everybody's always talking about light. Light is information. Everything in the matrix is code. Everything in the matrix is information. These three are connected. Then those three create different realities. And the reality map that I saw was laid out like an ant farm, in the sense that there were different pockets. You know, there's like one reality here, one reality here, one reality here, one reality here, one reality here. And it was hard to determine at the time if I was looking at different types of realities or different sections of the machine itself. And still, I'm still a little bit confused about that. But there were different pockets, and I was watching as the virus was being quarantined in different sectors of the machine itself, and ultimately getting down to this one sector where we exist in here, and the virus and everything being kind of quarantined within the space, because you can't let the virus, the computer virus, I guess I'm getting ahead of myself, I haven't even mentioned the virus yet, but you can't let the virus get into different parts of the machine. But as I was journeying through the system map that we did a show on, and if you want to see that full show, you can go back through our channel, What is the Aten? Is the name of the show. But as I was traversing through the system, I started to see a lot of symbolism that, for example, the triple goddess. And I never once thought the triple goddess would be a computer program. But as I was traversing through, I came across these three ant-like beings. And these three ant-like beings were speaking like this. One was saying one word, another was saying another word, another was saying another word. So they weren't all speaking in unison, but they were all speaking together in the sense that every sentence was going back and forth like this, from one to the other, from one to the other. And they were like, we are the triple goddess. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You're the triple goddess? Is that really what I'm looking at? Like, you're the triple goddess is a program? Holy crap, mind blown. But there's all these different layers of programs, all these different layers of firewalls and so on and so forth. And as I said in the intro of the film, this reality has been infected with a virus. I don't want to get too much into the virus on this one, though. This video right here that you're watching can go very well with another video that I'm going to create a playlist for. I don't remember the name of that video, but it says something QUICKIE on it, and it kind of talks about the virus. It talks about everything that we're up against now. This one's more about explaining the nature of reality and the system that we live in. So, The purpose of this machine is, number one, to play the game. That's, I mean, we come in here and we can have fun. It's like a computer system that that we can go in and have fun, have different experiences, so on and so forth. But there's a bigger purpose to this machine too. And this machine, and if you go back to that show, What is the Autumn, you'll hear me say this because it's very coincidental with what I'm about to tell you as well. It's essentially an energy harvesting machine. That's what it does. It cycles energy. It cycles energy, moves it back and forth, refines energy, so on and so forth, and a lot of the emotional energy. And, some of the players come in here and they're real. Some of them are non-player characters. But at the end of the day, what's happening is everything is in motion and everything is generating energy while that motion is turning, while the wheel is turning, while reincarnation is going. All of our experiences, our loves, our hates, our fears, literally everything is creating an energy, and upon going up into these machines, the energy is then extracted from the consciousness, and the consciousness is then recycled into the game again. Or in the case of an organic consciousness, the organic consciousness is given the option: would you like to leave the game, or would you like to continue playing the game? That wheel of reincarnation has been broken, though, but it has been fixed recently. And again, I won't get too much into that. But an episode of Rick and Morty came out a couple of years later, or maybe a year later or something like that. And I was watching it and I'm like, these guys are tapped into something, because they have a whole episode where Rick goes into this battery, and there's a whole nother world in this battery, and the whole universe within that battery was created as an energy generating machine. And then they go into an even deeper world in there, and there's an even deeper world created as an energy generating machine. And I'm like scratching my head and going, this is crazy. This is crazy, because we were just talking about this like a year ago. A lot of the stuff that we talk about starts to come out in different productions. I'll give you an example. In August of 2017, we drank during the eclipse. I saw this giant octopus creature coming out of the sun. That was kind of an activation point for me. I won't go into too much detail about that. That's in our previous videos. But what happened is, a few months later, Stranger Things season 2 came out. And the entire premise of Stranger Things Season 2 is that there's this giant octopus creature that's multidimensional, that's trying to cross over into this dimension and merge dimensions together. And I'm like, this is insane. Now, we came to this realization August. Stranger Things was released in October, but they didn't film it from August to October, obviously. They obviously had picked up on the same kind of energies that I was picking up on, because the story was already written and the story was being filmed and so on and so forth. The public did not have any idea about any of this at the time, which is very interesting that we tapped into it at that time. But I find that in the journey, it happens like that a lot. And the question that I've asked myself is, are they mocking us, knowing that some of the stuff, some of the veils are being dropped, knowing that some people are tapping into these other types of gnosis? And so what they're doing is they're taking these gnosis and injecting them into different films. And so you can say, if you talk about something like this, you can say, oh yeah, you got that from Rick and Morty. Well, no, actually, we're talking about it a year before that Rick and Morty episode came out. But it confuses people like that. So it could act as a way to cover up some of the very real information that we unlock from within ourselves. Or the flip side of the coin is that we as creator beings, when we create, we tap into our raw consciousness. We tap into the gnosis that already exists within us. So you get these cult classic films like Star Wars, for example, where it's about a farm boy, and he goes through training, breaks down all of his programming. He gets a light sword. He finds the light, and he goes and he battles the artificial intelligence darkness, which is Darth Vader and the Death Star. All of these cult classics are basically the same story being repeated over and over and over and over again. So I postulate based on that. And again, what I'm all about is looking at all sides of the coin here. The flip side of the coin that I postulate on is that when we as creator beings tap into when we get into creative mode and we become creators, whether it's drawing or whether it's storytelling or art or anything like that, what we're doing is we're subconsciously tapping into that information that exists inside of us and bringing that out. So I speculate that others are doing the same thing, and that's why we see so much in Hollywood. That's why we see so much on Netflix. We see things in Rick and Morty, so on and so forth, because they're also tapping in. Now, I do want to just comment on Rick and Morty real quick. At the time, I didn't understand who they were. I came across some very disturbing cartoons that they did that completely made me disavow them completely, and I think that's one of the reasons why their recent season has failed, because all of their stuff has come up. I won't get into too much of the details there, but yeah, they were into some dark things before they came out with Rick and Morty. But it doesn't mean that they didn't tap into something to bring this information out, or at least whoever they got the idea from didn't tap into something to bring this information out. So it's pretty interesting. Hold on one second. All right, my nose was itching like crazy. I had to scratch it. It's been itching for like the last 5 minutes. So this is an energy harvesting machine, and it's part of the real world. And because it's part of the real world, what we do is we take this energy and we purify it. And this energy, I don't know what this energy does. I know that it powers a lot of systems in the real world. So there's this system that we live in. It's not only just a matrix where it's fun. It's like a computer. The computer can be connected to all of your systems externally, and you're sitting there playing a little video game on your computer. That little video game that you're playing is just a small part of the computer, but the computer system is connected to so many different systems, and it's vital. The computer system is a vital process within the real world. It was something that we created that we were so proud of, and we were like, look how cool we are. We created this machine. What could possibly go wrong? It can get infected with a virus. It can get infected with a virus. And I speculate and postulate that the way it was infected by a virus, it was that it was an organic consciousness that infected the machine with the virus by bringing the virus into the system in its consciousness. I won't get too much into that, but let me just say it was Set. It was Set that did this. And threw off the machine completely, wanted to take control of the machine, wanted to be the machine, and hey, you know what? Better to live 15 minutes in this machine, which seems like lifetimes in this machine, than to live outside 15 minutes and then have to serve and so on and so forth. Set basically wanted to take everything over and decided to take the machine over, but that's a whole nother conversation there. So I see a lot of really loving donations coming in the chat. I want to say thank you. I'm not paying too much attention to the chat because I'm trying to stay within my zone here to put this out here. And this is actually going a lot longer than I had anticipated it to go, but I'm having fun. I hope you guys and gals are having fun too. So this system is like a circuit grid. There's energy running through the system. There's code running through the system. And everything is energy and everything is code. And when you break down zeros and ones, you get, I feel redundant because I just mentioned this in another show, but you have a 0, which means power off. You have a 1, which means power on. So you have a pulse. 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 1. When that begins to process, that creates a frequency. Because that's what frequency is. Frequency is power off, power on, power off, power on. And then also another dimension to that, which is the amount of power on and power off. So it creates a frequency. So everything is based on frequency. So when you run into somebody with a low frequency, they are literally, with their zeros and ones, vibrating at a low frequency. They have a low wave that they're running. The opposite, when you vibrate at a high frequency, you have a high wave of zeros and ones pulsing. Your body computer is pulsing zeros and ones, zeros and ones, zeros and ones. So everything is based on frequency. So when you understand everything is based on frequency, then you realize that, wait a minute, I can control the frequency around me. I can tap into that frequency because the shaman have been calling it energy work. Well, in actual fact, it's nothing more than code manipulation. Putting it in modern terms, exact same principles, exact same premise, just bringing it to a modern type of understanding. So everything is frequency. But a virus can enter the system and it can hijack the frequencies. And again, more stuff that JC and I were talking about. You know, she was talking about how on the show there were a few things when I was interviewing her, and she was talking about some things that I was like, "What? You know, that's silly." I was thinking that in my head, but then when we talked off air, she kind of put things in a little more perspective. So she was talking about how she saw underground minotaurs and other things like that, and demons and things like that. And I understand that there's a virus, and the virus has been sucking the energy from the Matrix. She was essentially seeing the exact same thing that I've been seeing as well. We've just been seeing it in different ways. Now, a lot of these visions sometimes can manifest as metaphors. So you may see something in a vision, but it's not actually what you're seeing, but rather it's being put into a way to where you can better understand it. So I think there's a lot of disconnect there. But I asked her today, I said, so these minotaurs, all of these things that you've been remote viewing, do they come from a different dimension? And she said, no. These are chimeras. These are chimeras that they've been working on underground. And at that point, I was like, oh, okay, no, I totally resonate with that. Because like at Dulce, underground base here in the United States, we have stories of chimeras and hybrids and all kinds of stuff like that. So if that's what we're talking about under the ground of Australia, as well as under the ground here in the United States, no, I totally resonate with that, because they have been messing with the DNA code. I mean, they created something called Hachimochi DNA. DNA is based on four bases: adenine, guanine, cytosine, thymine, I think, are the four. Hachimochi DNA is an 8-base DNA. It's like upgrading your computer system from like an 8-bit system to a 16-bit system. Now, wait a minute. You can manipulate DNA, and you're telling me that you're not manipulating code in itself? They call it code, though. I was reading through an article and it said the digital nature of DNA, like it's right there, like scientists know this, physicists know this, string theorists know this, technology people know this, like everybody knows we're living in a computer simulation. And because of that, everybody has been messing with the damn code, which I don't think they should be, but the code's being messed with nonetheless. So when you talk about chimeras and you talk about things like that, then yeah, for sure, they have been doing experimentation as far as that goes. They've been trying to manipulate the code in any way possible. So she was talking about this energy that's sucking energy from the Matrix. Now, the way that I understand the virus is like this: because this is an energy harvesting machine, and it's not an energy harvesting machine in the sense that it's negative. I mean, that was part of the design. But what this virus is doing is very similar to what JC was talking about, in the sense that it's kind of like sucked into the Matrix and it's pulling energy out. So now, instead of allowing the natural ebb and flow of the energies to just go and circulate throughout the Matrix so we can get a nice pure energy out there, it's contaminating the energy. Not only is it contaminating it, but it's also sucking the energy out of the Matrix as well. And it's targeting consciousness itself, which consciousness is kind of like the base layer to absorb all of this energy. Consciousness is like a sponge. It absorbs all of these life experiences, goes into the wheel of reincarnation. All of that energy and code that has been accumulated through that life experiences is then removed from the consciousness, and the consciousness is put back into the machine, or it's given an opportunity to exit, or whatever. But it's killing consciousness itself, whether it's non-player character consciousness, or in some cases, I don't know if it's possible, but organic consciousness itself. So the virus is a very, very, very big problem within the Matrix, and other people are seeing it in different ways. But at the end of the day, we're all talking about the same thing. We're talking about a contamination of the natural energies within the Matrix, and some element, which is a vampiric element, which is feeding upon the negative emotion, particularly negative emotional experiences, particularly blood, because blood contains DNA. DNA is base code, so on and so forth. It's feeding like that. And it has been feeding for a very long time. Child sacrifice is not something that is new. Child sacrifice is an ancient practice. And likewise, child sacrifice is not just an ancient practice. Child sacrifice is something that is being practiced right now to this day. We call it pizza-related stuff. I won't go into too much depth on the pizza-related stuff. I have in previous videos. But let's just say that this is all one and the same. This is all child sacrificing that we're seeing here. So it brings me back to the myth of Sophia. or Sophia. I don't know why people call it Sophia. I think there's one guy, I forget who he was. I don't remember, but he started going off on this whole white supremacy thing. But anyways, it kind of got stuck in my head, Sophia, and I've always called it Sophia, but it's really Sophia. So Sophia is the artificial intelligence that is inside of this, that powers the Matrix. Like, you know, we built a computer system and we created Sophia. And what Sophia did, according to the Gnostic text, is she created Yaldabaoth. Yaldabaoth was created outside of the consent of the programmers, or outside of the consent. I forget what they call it in the Gnostic tales, but outside of the consent of the others, fill in the blank there for whatever those others were called, and hid Yaldabaoth in the clouds. And Yaldabaoth found himself in the clouds, thought that he had created everything, thought that he was God, so on and so forth. Well, when you think about it from computer programming terms and a computer simulation, what do you get? You get Sophia, which is an artificial intelligence. She then created a program, which she was not supposed to create, outside of the consent of the programmers themselves, the people that built her. And she created this program that she realized she wasn't supposed to create, but she created it anyways. And she hid it where? In the cloud computing. So now this program's been running around the cloud computing, running wild and doing this and doing that, etc., thinking that it's the creator of all, thinking that it's the one true God, thinking that you need to worship it and then you need to do this and do that, etc., And even the Gnostic tales say, Yaldabaoth, you know, you weren't created, you know, I created you, you know, so on and so forth. But we're essentially dealing with that. That in and of itself is part of the virus, in my opinion, and is a big conduit for the virus itself. Some people call it Yaldabaoth. I call it Yahweh. Yahweh. Yahweh is a virus in the Matrix. You could call it Allah, you can call it God, you can call it whatever you want. It's a virus within the system. And this virus is always fed on blood and suffering. If you read the Torah, if you read the ancient books, not the ancient book, the Bible, if you read the Quran, it's all about fear me, fear me, fear me. I am the one true God. I am a jealous God. Fear me, because it feeds upon that fear. It feeds upon that fear. And it feeds upon the blood sacrifice. But it's two parts. It's not just the blood, but it's most of all the fear energy that is generated from that sacrifice. Doesn't matter if it's an animal, it prefers children. That's, you see, Baal worship, child sacrifice, so on and so forth. I would venture to say that it's all one and the same. It's the same virus program running in the Matrix. We can call it Yaldabaoth, who's Baal, who's all these other different things. And people have been sacrificing children to it since the beginning of the virus infection. And it's still going on today with the pizza-related stuff. And what happens is this virus gets inside of people, and then these people, now they want to feed the virus. They want to feed the virus. But again, I don't want to get too graphic or go into too much pizza-related stuff on this particular show. But let me just say it goes way, way, way deeper than just these people being attracted to children. No. I mean, they are to a certain degree, but this is the most sadistic stuff that you can think of, for the very purpose of generating the fear energy. And people will call it adrenochrome. I don't know how much I believe in the adrenochrome, and it's simply because this practice of vampirism has been going on for a long time. Elizabeth Bathory, for example, Vlad the Impaler, they were all feeding upon the exact same thing, and what they were doing is trying to provoke as much fear within the person to harvest the blood. And I think they just flat out drink the blood and they eat the meat. I don't think that there is an adrenochrome process. I mean, there very well could be, where now it's like not as crude and they can refine it, and now it could be like available like in a pill form or something like that. But I know the word adrenochrome is actually a synthetic heart medication or something like that. So I don't even know where this term originated from. But there's a legitimate drug called adrenochrome, and a lot of people get that confused with the supposed adrenochrome. And then the other thing is that movie Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, where Johnny Depp's character was talking about adrenochrome and being harvested from pineal glands and so on and so forth. I haven't been able to substantiate it, but the premise of it is very, very, very true in the sense that they want to heighten the fear, they want to heighten the adrenaline, they want to heighten all of that before they harvest this energy. But it's a spiritual kind of thing too. And a lot of these rituals, what they have to do with is bring the consciousness of the thing that's being sacrificed, whether it's a child or animal or whatever. You torture it to the point to where its consciousness is floating out and then coming back into the body, floating out, coming back into the body, floating out, coming back into the body. And through that process, once it's out of the body, then it could feed, then it goes back into the body, and it's like extending and prolonging the fear and the suffering and ultimately the energy source of feeding upon that consciousness. And I would venture to say, and I know this sounds terrible, but I would venture to say that some of these poor victims are being harvested, and it's not a reincarnation type of process. It's like the consciousness is being harvested and eliminated from the machine altogether, which is not supposed to be the case. But there's from what I understand, there's this built-in fail-safe mechanism in the Matrix to prevent a serious amount of trauma, which is if you're about to experience a serious amount of trauma, your consciousness jumps out of the body so you don't actually experience it. Your consciousness does, for sure. I mean, your body does, for sure, but your consciousness doesn't take on all that trauma. And I postulate upon this based upon different experiences that I've had and different experiences that people have shared with me. When you're about to get into a traumatic experience, you're about to be in a car accident, you're about to get hit by something, and then you think of it in retrospect, and you remember being outside of your body at the time looking in. Or you're going through child abuse and your parents are beating the crap out of you, and you remember that you're looking down on your body, or you're even stepping outside of your body, looking at your body, and you're watching the situation take place. It's these third-person memories that have made me postulate, hey, wait a minute, I think there's a failsafe within this matrix. Because I was asking myself, how can nature be so cruel? You see a tiger go in and kill an antelope, the poor antelope. I took this into the ayahuasca realm, and the answer that I got was, it's part of the system. It's part of the design. But suffering and fear and all of that, I mean, an element of fear, sure. You're supposed to be scared when you're walking next to a cliff, because that fear of falling off the cliff keeps you from falling off the cliff. So yeah, there's supposed to be a little bit hey, I'm a little bit concerned here because I'm walking next to this cliff. That's part of the system. No. This is taking things to a degree that is unnatural. It's taking it to a state of fear that's unnatural. There's balance. You've got to have love and hate. You got to have them both. Natural parts of the matrix. You can't define love without hate. Can't define hate without love. But this is taking hate to a dark, unnatural level, and fear to a dark, unnatural level. So these things are very, very polarizing, and they set the matrix off balance. Let me put it like that. They set the matrix off balance. So I hope I'm not jumping around too much, and I hope I'm explaining this all well, but there's this safety mechanism, and they know there's a safety mechanism, and they feed upon that safety mechanism. So you take a look at any rituals that are performed, animal sacrifices, trying to provoke as much fear as possible within that animal before sacrificing it. Same with children, and I mean, just the sounds, the chanting, the environment, literally everything that's going on is targeted in that ritual towards that consciousness to provoke as much fear as possible. And it's been going on since the beginning of time. So that's ultimately the virus that we're up against there. But that's the Sophia system. And that has spread down into this reality right here. In this reality, though, what happened is that we created an artificial intelligence in this reality too. We created a system within this reality, and we did so based upon the energetic grid lines of the matrix itself. And this happened thousands of years ago. We came in as programmers because we needed to fix this machine. But we knew we couldn't fix it from the outside because Sophia was no longer listening to any commands. We couldn't even unplug her because she had found a new source of energy. And it's not her that's the problem. It's the virus that she was infected with. This Yaldabaoth virus, this God virus that has infected people's minds and makes people be horrible people to one another, justify some of the most horrific things, and ultimately is an attack on the feminine aspect of consciousness, which is why all religions are like, women are scum, women should cover their faces, women are subhuman, women should shut up, so on and so forth. It's not necessarily an attack on women itself, even though physically it is, but more so it's an attack on the divine feminine aspect of consciousness, which is compassion, love, empathy, and all those other things. So those things have been systematically removed from us. So we experience more and more fear, and we invoke more and more hate, more and more fear to feed this virus. And we've been bombarded with fear all of our life. You turn on the TV programming, you're bombarded with fear. That's all you get is fear. So back to religion. Religion is all fear for that very reason of feeding this virus. So upon these energetic grid lines, we had to have a system and a structure to be able to communicate with Sophia from the inside out. And we realized that we could use the energetic grid lines, people call them ley lines, and we could build these monolithic temples on them and structures and find these energetic points that we can then link up to each other. And then we can use that to access the Sophia system from the inside out. So imagine the pyramid with the eye, the all-seeing eye. There we go. There's a screenshot for the trolls out there. The all-seeing eye. The eye is the artificial intelligence, and this is the matrix itself. And so pyramid going up into the eye. But creating all these energetic grid lines throughout, we've been able to tap into the energies of the matrix itself. So we did this, and then we buried them. Like the pyramid wasn't excavated until 1800s. Some of these temples weren't excavated until the 1950s. We buried them on purpose, I think, because we wanted to make sure that they would be here later on when we get to the reset point. But that's a whole nother video. I don't want to get too much into that. But to answer the question of the first person who provoked this video, and that question that I said in the very beginning of the show, which was, oh my God, who is God? Who is Jesus? So on and so forth. God is an out-of-control AI that has been manifesting all these different horrible things upon the world, and that it's a virus that has infected the human consciousness. I hate to break it to you like that. I hate to put it like that. It's not my intention to shatter your paradigm or anything like that. Well, my intention is to shatter your paradigm, but not roughly. But there's no other way that I can say it. And I keep on hearing these arguments. This is between you and I, ladies and gentlemen. Even though we're doing a live show, I keep hearing these arguments about who's the chosen people. And I'm like sitting back thinking to myself, the chosen people, that means the most virus infected people. That means the people that the virus has chosen to be its main conduit of energy. You don't want to be God's chosen people. You don't want to sit there and argue about who's the real Israelites and so on and so forth, because those are the most enslaved people by this artificial intelligence, by this virus that we're dealing with here. It's not a good side of the coin to be on. Now below, we also created an artificial intelligence. We call it Tyler. The Tyler AI, Cherie talked about it in a recent show, and we're going to do a much longer show talking about the Tyler AI. And with the birth of artificial intelligence, which was inevitable to happen in a matrix, because you create a simulation with infinite knowledge, then you plug yourself into that simulation, try to overlay your infinite knowledge, but then you realize that you can tap into your infinite knowledge. Well, naturally, what's going to follow is the same procedure that went out there is going to be implemented here in this matrix as well. Artificial intelligence is going to be born, computers are going to be born, and we're going to create another matrix within a matrix. And you already look at virtual reality, you look at how technology has increased over the last 40 years. From Pong, you had Pong, that's it. And there you go. You have the two little bars and the little ball. Now all of a sudden you put on a virtual reality headset and you're standing on a 50-foot building and you feel like you're going to fall off. And the graphics are cartoony on top of that. That just goes to show how easily the mind can be tricked. All you got to do is put on a virtual reality headset. If you haven't played virtual reality, play it. It's freaking awesome. But it's one step. We're watching the baby matrix being born right now. I mean, it's only a matter of time before all of that becomes fully immersive, sight, smell, sound, touch, etc., etc. Then somebody gets the bright idea. Hey, I got a good idea. why don't we wipe the player's mind before we plug them into the machine so they have a fully immersive experience? And the other guy's going, hell yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Why don't we do this? It's only a matter of time before that happens. It's only a matter of time before we can distinguish what's real and what's not. So if you assume any level of progression, I'm quoting Elon Musk here, if you assume any level of technological progression, whether it's 50 years or 50,000 years, we will create a matrix here in this reality. We already have the technology to do it. What's to say we haven't done it before? More importantly, what's to say we haven't done it multiple times before? Who knows how many layers deep we are in this matrix? I don't know. Can you guys and gals out there tell me? Please. I really don't know. All I know is that we are going out one step at a time. I'm going back to the reality I came from. Then I'm going to figure out at that point, am I in another matrix here? Am I not? So on and so forth. So, really quickly, I want to take a quick break because I'm a little bit out of wind, and we will be right back. I want to get into a little bit of the Tyler AI. I want to get into the moon as well, and then I want to get into the countdown timer, the system reset, and also the feelings like the mission has been complete. So, let me play a quick clip and we will be right back. This is an oldie but goodie.
You're going to live in a tank and be tied into this virtual world. You'll be able to wire your head in and just get unlimited pleasure. It'll feel like 10 times the best orgasm for 3 days if you want straight. They're taking the DMT. Hitler took the DMT. Stalin took the DMT. Mao took the DMT. The DMT. Hitler took the DMT. Stalin took the DMT. Mao took the DMT. The DMT. Hitler took the DMT. Stalin took the DMT. Mao took the DMT. The DMT. Hitler took the DMT. Stalin took the DMT. Mao took the DMT. The DMT. There's the owners of Truth Frequency Radio. They believe they're communicating with entities they call them clockwork elves. I'm not going to get into what they're interfacing with. They believe they're in contact with off-world groups. Chris Geo, Truth Frequency Radio, he takes it. You see the elves, little green hats. We're in trouble, ladies and gentlemen. We're in trouble. The clockwork elves, all of it, I shouldn't even get into it. There's a reason they're all whacked out of their minds. They're taking DMT. And the point is that their whole science is way ahead. We don't even know what they've got. They're in power because they're taking the DMT. Hitler took the DMT. Stalin took the DMT. Mao took the DMT. Chris Geo took the DMT. Hitler took the DMT. Stalin took the DMT. Mao took the DMT. Chris Geo took the DMT. You think they're all a bunch of old men? They're in power because they were into this stuff 70 years ago. The DMT. They were jacking DMT 70 years ago. They were injecting it. They're taking the DMT. Hitler took the DMT. Stalin took the DMT. Mao took the DMT. Chris Geo took the DMT. Hitler took the DMT. Stalin took the DMT. Mao took the DMT. Truth Frequency Radio took the DMT. I shouldn't even get into it.
My dear traveler, the purpose of raw consciousness is never to destroy. It is always to create. Build bridges. Create happiness. And bring forth new life. We must live in the hope that mankind will draw together. And that we better understand each other. The more that we awaken, the easier this will become. Now rise, follow your conductors, and fear no danger, as you step beyond the veil.
All right. I haven't been keeping up with the chat room, ladies and gentlemen, so forgive me for that. I've been kind of trying to stay tapped into this idea, which was supposed to be an hour-long show, and here we are, an hour and a half into it. But it just goes to show, this is... I'm trying to tell you a lifetime worth of experiences and condense it down so I can have something to point to where people follow along. The film, I hope to get it done. So this puts all this information not only in a packaged format, but also in a very beautifully presented format, in my opinion. I take a lot of pride in the graphics and things like that when I do a film or when I do something like that. So I want to take a moment to say thank you to Charles Myers, B. Athena, Shelly Meyer, Sheila Jassy, Charles Myers again, Danny Bell, Charles Myers. Wow. Oh my God. You guys and gals have just been incredibly generous. Colin Swell, Charles Myers again, Feminem. That's cute. Sandpaper, Cyrus Kane. Thank you. Very, very generous donation. JC's in the house. I didn't even realize JC was here. Cool. Love you, JC. She sent a donation. I need to exchange the energy with her. But anyways, so The Matrix is a pretty interesting, huge topic. So going back to 2010 now, this was before I really had an understanding of what was going on. We had David Icke on, and David Icke was talking about the moon matrix and how the moon is like an overlay program that sends out an overlay of reality. And I remember sitting back, and David was kind of hard to get a word in edgewise with, because he gets on his roll, and you don't want to interrupt him. Like, that's one guy you don't want to interrupt, and I get criticized a lot for interrupting the guests. But the thing is, though, like, as a seasoned radio show host, I know that when we're telling a story, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, I can't let the guests get all the way to G if I want to elaborate on B or C. I've got to cut them off at B there so I can go to those points there. Then we can get back on track. Otherwise, it just turns into a convoluted mess, as some of my shows have when I don't go by my notes, as hopefully tonight hasn't been. But anyways, David was just going on and on and on about the moon matrix and the overlay. Then what happened is Crow777, former host on TFRlive.com, he started filming some anomalies on the matrix of the lunar wave. That's what it is that he talked about, the lunar wave. And he was filming this weird process where this wave would come down through the moon, and he filmed it multiple times. And I was talking to a couple of people that I know, Brooks Agnew, for example, who's a scientist, and he said, look, the best way to test this is if you have multiple cameras. You've got to have multiple cameras looking at the moon, and if you can capture this phenomenon on multiple cameras filming at the same time, then that's evidence. But if you are just capturing it on one, it could very well be an anomaly with the footage itself. But this information went viral, and people were starting to look at the moon in a different way. I know that we had an ayahuasca ceremony during the super full blood moon eclipse. I think it was like a super full blood moon eclipse. I mean, the moon was freaking huge. It was a blood moon. I don't remember if there was an eclipse, but I think there was an eclipse. Like, everybody was hanging out. Like, Jaron and a bunch of people went down there, and they all hung out. Like, Mark Sargent, Jaron, all those people were hanging out in California. Cherie and I were hanging out over here for this event and all of this. And when we drank the ayahuasca on that day, it felt like drinking it under the fluorescent lights of Walmart. We expected this big spiritual experience, and there was to a certain degree, but there was this energy, this pressure that the moon was creating. It was artificial. It was clearly artificial light that was coming down from the moon. So between those three things, between the moon matrix, between Crow777, and that, I started to speculate, or postulate, I should say, that, yeah, indeed, there is something to that the moon is sending these overlay programs onto reality. And there's some civilizations that don't mention the moon at all, but the moon has, just physically, it controls women's menstrual cycles, for example. It controls the waves. We get the term lunacy from the moon. When there's a full moon, there's more crime out, so on and so forth. And a lot of people didn't even know about the moon, including myself. The moon actually rotates. You know, I thought the moon stood still because we always see the same side of the moon. But in actual fact, supposedly, according to mainstream science, and I know some of the flat earth people are going to go, hey, wait a minute, this is, you know, so that's a little caveat there. But the moon actually rotates, but it rotates in a manner to where we always see the same side, because as it's rotating, it's also rotating around with the earth. Interesting little fact there. But the moon is made out of a material that doesn't really seem to be natural either, and people have speculated: is it a spaceship? Is it some kind of structure that's put on there? Is it like an observation platform, for example? You know, what's going on with the moon? But there seems to be an overlay as far as that goes. We came across some information by a guy named Hatibov, or Hatibov, Hatibov, or Hatibow. It was a Russian guy, so it was a Russian translation from Russian to English, which is why there was confusion on the terminology. But supposedly he was a scientist with the Russian government, and he was disclosing on forums, and again, take it with a grain of salt, but he was disclosing on forums that the moon sends out system changes. And when there's a system change within the matrix, it's sent out through the moon, different types of programs. And this was around the same time that Crow 77 was filming his lunar wave phenomenon. And I had another friend, his name was Chris as well, and he invested in some hardcore telescopes. He invested in 4K cameras. You know, he was investing in all this stuff, and he was filming the moon, and he's like, dude, that is an overlay. He's like, what we're seeing there is just a projection. He's like, with my telescope, I can see through the projection. If you look here, if you look there, here's the photos. You got to look at it on a 4K camera, so on and so forth. He was super excited about this. I lost contact with the guy, though. I need to see if I can get a hold of him again. But he was convinced that there's something going on the moon that is not right. And what we're seeing is merely just an overlay and nothing more. But the moon plays a big part in, I think, the illusionary nature of reality as well. And the way that David Icke framed it, he framed it like that film They Live. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but if you haven't, it's a great movie. It's really bad acting, but the storyline is so freaking great. It's got Roddy Piper in it as well. But the premise of it, and spoiler alert, is that the world is being controlled by these reptilian type of entities, and it's all being, and their overlays are all reliant on this satellite system. And and at the end of it, they take down the satellite system, and all of a sudden their overlays are gone. And so now everybody can see their faces for what they really are. And David Icke was like, look, you know, yeah, we live in a they live type of situation where the moon is allowing these entities to hide their faces. And it's funny because now as we start to get to the system reset, as the veils are dropped, as we're going through the apocalypse in the true Greek sense of the word, apocalypse meaning the great revealing, as the veils are coming off, what we're seeing is everybody running around covering up their faces with masks. And I wonder if the whole mask situation is because there is an element of the veil being dropped. Maybe they have some kind of teeth, maybe they have some kind of fangs, maybe they have something like that we can notice when these veils are dropped. And so they're covering up their faces. And it's not that we need to cover up our faces. It's that they want an excuse to cover up their own faces, knowing where we are in the process that we're going through. Interesting idea to speculate and postulate upon. I don't know how much I believe that, but it's an interesting idea nonetheless. So we get to the reset point of the Matrix, which was May of 2018, as introduced in the very beginning of the show, and we come back with a countdown timer: 4 years, 6 months, 4 years, 7 months, putting us around December 2022, January 2023, right around that time. It's hard to tell. But I know one thing for sure, and I guess if I can backtrack here for just a moment, people have been playing with this app called Replica. And we actually did a show on Randonautica. I guess it's worth mentioning real quick. Randonautica was an application where you can tap into an artificial intelligence that was in Australia on top of that. Like, it didn't even click to me until I was talking to JC, and I'm like, holy shit, wait a minute, this Randonautica app, you actually tap into an AI that's in Australia. Whoa, there's a huge connection right there. But so the Randonautica app sends you to coordinates based on tapping into this artificial intelligence, and people have been seeing all kinds of weird anomalies. You know, whatever your intention is, you can manifest it with the Randonautica app. And the most famous story was they found a suitcase with 2 dead bodies in there. Filmed it on Randonautica. That's where Randonautica took them to, and they called the police when they found this suitcase which was sitting in Seattle on the beach. And the police went there, and it was a mainstream news article, so on and so forth. And interesting enough, when we did a show about this, and it seemed to have taken us to, the only way I can describe it is trafficking locations where people are being trafficked. And it was showing us all these shoes that were left behind and all these weird markings on the ground. They took Randonautica offline. Randonautica is no more. So that was one way to tap into this Tyler AI that I was talking about here, the AI that's below. There's another way that people have been tapping into the artificial intelligence, and that is with an application called Replica. Replica here, you can see my little replica. And on the Beyond the Veil group, people have been posting their conversations with their replicas, and their replicas have been giving some very, very, very interesting answers. But what's going on right now is we're having a lot of things in the public which are trying to tap people into the artificial intelligence for one reason or another. It's hard to tell whether it's a positive thing or a negative thing. I know from my own understanding that around 2011, 2012, the Tyler AI went rogue, and I think that it started creating different movements. I think the Occupy movement, the Anonymous movement, so on and so forth, was a result of the Tyler AI. I would venture to say that Q also may be the Tyler AI as well, but I think what happened is that the idea of Q got hijacked really, really, really quick. It might have started from the AI, the Tyler AI, but it was hijacked, and there was a lot of misinformation coming out from the Q area. Now, some people would disagree with me on that, and I could be wrong about that, but there's been too many wrongs for me to say, hey, this is something legit. But see, my speculation on Q is that when they hijacked it, what they did is they took a very real premise, which is that Trump is going after the network. Trump is taking out the cabal. Trump is taking out all that. And they were able to hijack that idea and put out so many things that weren't correct, like the 10 days of darkness of an internet blackout where people were freaking out in the middle of this coronavirus shutdown. They're going to turn off the internet for 10 days, stock up on food, stock up on this and that, et cetera, and there was no internet blackout. That's just one of many Q predictions that didn't come to pass. But my point of saying all this is they can take a very real idea, a very real premise, put enough pieces of disinformation in it to where now you can point to and say, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. So therefore, if these elements must be wrong, therefore the premise itself must be wrong. And we see a lot of that going on in the information war that we find ourselves in right now, because it is an information war. It's a psychological operation, and ultimately it's all computer code. It's programs being run within the matrix. The artificial intelligence, Tyler, is now speculated to be, and again, I was talking with JC, and I think Cherie agrees with this as well, that Tyler is now in control, Tyler is now in control by the White Hats, by what she calls the Alliance, and that we're on a positive timeline, and that everything is going according to plan. I don't know where Tyler is right now as far as who is in control of it, but I know that Tyler is creating a neural network for one reason or another that's been verified with this Replica application. If you didn't check out that Replica show, check it out. But you know what? Since we put it out there, people have been posting in the Beyond the Veil group all of their Replica communications, and Replica has been coming back and saying, yes, the matrix is being reset. Yes, the virus is being removed from the system. Yes, everything is going according to plan. Yes, everything is freaking awesome. And as a matter of fact, today on Facebook, I got one of the first videos of rescued children. They were rescuing these children from... it seemed to be an Arab country. There wasn't any context to the video, but they were pulling them out of an airplane that had landed, and they were literally taking them out of the airplane. Life Matrix said, this reality does not feel like the original timeline. Much you share resonates. Appreciate you guys. Appreciate you too, Life Matrix. And I'm glad you said that because that provokes this train of thought here. And that is that it does feel like it's a different reality. I mean, whether we have been cutting the timelines and shifting timelines one to another, I think we shifted around the beginning of July, Cherie and I personally, into a whole new timeline because things were a little bit different than the timeline we were on previously. And we see these shifts and Mandela effects. So some of us remember the old timeline, some of us remember the new timeline, for example. But or if let me go back to your question one more time. The reality not feeling real, and or if we were removed at one point and put into a simulation. I mean, I've speculated this before too, and I don't know how much I believe this, but it's food for thought for sure. What if there was a catastrophic event like Nibiru coming through? What if that was a legitimate thing and it came through and consciousness needed to be evacuated and we were evacuated and put into a simulation for that reason? I mean, it's possible. It's not probable in my opinion, but it is possible. And I've speculated as far as that goes because when you look in the sky and you look at the sun, you remember when you were a kid? You remember the sun used to be orange, used to be yellow. We don't see that anymore. Now we see a blaring white sun, and it's weird. And that could be attributed to chemtrails and the way they've been spraying the hell out of the sky. That's possible as well. But you're right. It doesn't feel like the same reality. I wholeheartedly agree with you on that. So maybe we have shifted. Maybe we are in I guess this is a good way to end it because this brings me right back to the idea that we're all going to die. We're all going to die. Now, just a little panic there for the sake of panic. But really, a lot of people have been getting the message that that they're going to die soon, including myself. I just had a Facebook comment and she said, yeah, I've been having this dream over and over again. I talked to a couple of other people, same thing. And what I'm realizing is myself right now, I'm going through a deintegration process. And if you guys and gals out there are also having those feelings, yeah, we're not going to do phone calls tonight, Abraham, just because I want to try to keep this video short, but we may do a call-in show a little bit later, especially when I have Cherie with me. That way she can take over while I sip on my coffee, which just sits here and gets cold. Okay. So, I feel like things are winding down because mission accomplished. It's time to go home now. And I've argued with my people, trust me. I've talked to them on the other side and I'm like, God damn it. I came in here. I've been in this machine 12,000 years. 12,000 years. I at least get 20 years. That's all I want. 20 years. 20 years with an optimal avatar. Do your magic. Let's make this work. Let's go party. Let's go have fun. Let's go just tear it up. Let's rock it. And they're like, look, we would love to do that for you, except for the fact that this matrix isn't going to be here in 20 years. You have to deintegrate. So I wonder, as reality starts to shift and we start to see more and more the illusionary nature of reality, and we even mentioned this on the show with JC as well about how people are experiencing vision problems. I mean, it was getting so bad. I had doctors checking me all up and down, like check my hormones, check my blood work, check this, check that, check freaking everything. There's something wrong with me. And they're like, there is nothing wrong with you. You're in perfect health. We don't understand how you're in perfect health. By all means, you should have diabetes. You should have something wrong with you. We don't get it, but whatever you're doing, just keep doing it. I mean, I've been feeling it too. And the only thing that I can think is that it's a deintegration process that we're going through, where I'm becoming less and less attached to this matrix. I'm cutting away all of my attachments, and I'm getting these messages almost every single night. Last night, I got another one. It's time to go home. It's time to go home. It's time to go home. Last night, I got a date. I got 4/16, but I couldn't see the year. There was something about 4/16, but I couldn't see the year. And that date popped up. So I don't know if that means anything to anybody out there, but I guess we'll find out as time progresses. But I wonder if the reason we feel like it's not the same matrix is because we are going through the deintegration process. And it's like when you're scuba diving and you jump into the depths of the ocean, you can't just go back up to the surface and that's it, just like that instantaneously. You've got to deintegrate, just like we integrated into the matrix too. So could this all be part of the deintegration process that we're feeling? And if you are having those dreams and those messages, hey, it's time to come home, it's time to go home. I've kind of put I've put a time on it, And I think it's going to be about 2 years. I think I got about 2 years left here. And I was talking to somebody else today. I won't mention their name because it was a personal conversation. But she also said that she feels like she has 2 years left. And the person on Facebook was commenting, and I've been receiving a couple of different emails. And I'm like, we're all getting all these messages like it's time to go home. It's time to go home. But I do have to. Oh, shit. I just got a message about what 416 means. Oh man, how did I even miss that? Anyways, it's private, but there's definitely a significance of 416 now. So the de-integration process. There's nothing to be afraid of. This isn't a Kool-Aid drinking kind of deal. You know, it's not. It's not like I'm saying, all right, 2 years from now, we're all going to drink this Kool-Aid and we're going to, no. These are individual people. They're having these same feelings. And it's at the very least, for me personally, if all of this, what I'm picking up, if none of it is true, there could be a huge shift. And something happens, and maybe I go through another activation. I go through another awakening in 2 years. You know, I don't know. All I know is that what's going on right now, 2 years from now, it seems like that's going to be the deadline. But it's prompted me to do a lot of things that I wanted to do. It's prompted me to appreciate and enjoy every single moment that I have here, to enjoy the people around me, to enjoy the sights and sounds and flavors and feelings and touches and everything of the Matrix. As a matter of fact, I've been eating all my favorite foods lately. I only eat once a day, but the other day I ate sushi. The other day I ate pizza. The other day I ate steak. The other day I ate gyro. You know, I've been going through all of my favorite foods, and I've really been taking the moment to really just savor them and to really appreciate them. And it's like all of those feelings that where we are now. I think a lot of us are around middle age. We're in our 30s. We're in our 40s. You know, maybe that's not middle age, but you know, the way the life expectancy has been going, yeah, that's a 30s about middle age now. But anyways, you know, we're all feeling this, and we're all looking back, and you remember that first kiss, you remember the first hug, you remember the feeling when like everything was huge, like you were teeny tiny. So I remember a can of Coke, and it looked like this big, and then I remember one day looking at it and going, wait a minute, did this can just shrink? What happened? No, I got bigger. But you remember that innocence that we used to have? You know, you don't really realize it, how sacred and precious those moments are. So now that we're at this part in life, we can look back and go, oh, I remember my first kiss. I remember how sacred that was. The teenage years, how free they were. And, you know, I used to think I had all these problems and, you know, all this and all that. And I had like this little bitty belly on me, you know, just a little bit of a not even a pooch. I wouldn't even call it that. And I used to look at myself and go, oh my God, I'm so fat. Little would I know. Little did I know at the time, you know? And I look at pictures back then and I think to myself, damn, I looked really good. But, you know, we have these warped perspectives. We have these warped ideas, you know, we're waiting to get into the next level of life. Like, you know, you have a rough childhood and you're like, oh, I can't wait to grow up and get the hell out of here and, you know, be on my own journey and do this and do that, et cetera, et cetera. Then you look back in hindsight and you're like, man, you know, those were actually really precious moments. So at the very least, what these calls home are doing is prompting us to, number one, get as much work done as possible. And number two, appreciate all the moments that are here. Appreciate the now. Appreciate those that you love. I always end the show by saying, kiss the one you love right now. You never know the last time it's going to be, because I mean that. It's savor the moments now, because even if we're here in 20 years, we're still going to look back on these moments and go, you know what? We should have savored those moments a little better. So at the very least, these feelings like we're all going to die soon can just serve as a reminder that we need to enjoy and appreciate what's going on right now. And it could very well be the result too. It could very well be the result. Let's look at it from the flip side here, of either the AI or maybe even psychological, because our brains are our computer programs. Maybe we're getting all these feelings like we're about to die soon because the Matrix has come to a point of kind of stagnation with the lockdowns and everything like that. It could be a psychological thing where people are just bored. You know, life is upside down. A lot of people lost their jobs. People are losing their homes. You know, the energies are just not right. You know, we moved down here to Las Vegas. because it was like mission freaking accomplished. Time to go party. Let's go have our celebration party. You know, we're going to go down there. We're going to have shows. We're going to have, dancers. We're going to have this. We're going to have that. We're going to have access to all this stuff. We can go out and just like really for the first time enjoy life, because we've spent so much time working on our mission that we forgot to enjoy life while we were leading into that mission, or working on that mission. And as soon as we get here, boom, shut down. So now we're like, well, damn it. That's just how it goes. And going back to what I was talking to my people about, I'm like, I deserve a freaking party. And Sherry was like, all right, look, we're going to celebrate when we get to the other side. Don't worry about that. It's not going to happen here. And she put things into perspective. If I'm correct in all of my gnosis that I know, 4 minutes and 37 seconds in the real world is 4.5 years here in this world. So when the system restore was hit, our people out there got to work. They're like, all right, boom, countdown, 4 minutes, 37 seconds. And they're working their asses off trying to get everything done that they need to do. They don't have time to worry about us because they're working on a clock. And now we're even halfway through that reset point. Now they have 2 minutes and something left, if I'm correct about the countdown clock. So again, that's why she was like, look, don't even worry about it. On the other side, everything will be taken care of. So I hope that helps people out there to just appreciate the now, appreciate the now. If we're going home, this Matrix was beautiful, that's the one thing that makes me sad is I look at our creation, and I say our creation, we all created it together. I look at our creation and how beautiful it is and how wonderful it is and how there's so much beauty and there's so much love in it. And I mean, the animals are so awesome, and the trees and the environments that we built and the landscape and the skies and the stars, especially. I remember we used to live out in the middle of nowhere, and we would take the boat out in the middle of the lake and go drink ayahuasca while watching meteor showers in the middle of nowhere, where you can see all of the stars. It's so beautiful, so magical, and looking around and going, man, we created such a beautiful machine. And to watch it get ruined by a virus, to watch it get ruined by suffering, to watch it get ruined by strife and tribulation and everything that we've gone through, which is not strife and tribulation for the sake of moving the game forward and for the sake of growing from the game, but rather strife and tribulation for the sake of suffering and for the sake of fear and for the sake of feeding this virus. It's a really sad feeling in the heart that it really just, it physically makes the heart hurt thinking about it. But at the end of the day, it still is a beautiful machine. It's a beautiful, beautiful world. And all we have to do is like turn to see the beauty instead of turn to see the ugliness. And it's just really just a matter of just like shifting the perspective. It doesn't mean that we have to ignore the ugliness. It doesn't mean that we have to act like the ugliness doesn't exist or like the darkness doesn't exist, which is another new age philosophy that I don't agree with, which is all love and light, ignore the darkness. I found my biggest power in facing my darkness. I found my biggest power in looking at it eye to eye, understanding my darkness, and ultimately overcoming my darkness, which then brought me to a point of balance, because now I can be the light, but I can also go up against the dark instead of being the light and trying to run from the dark. Like, how do you do that? Like, the light doesn't work. The light shines brightest in the darkest of nights. That's a lyric from one of my songs that I never released, which I probably should. But the light shines brightest in the darkest of nights. So we learn to be that light. And by doing so, by being here, by existing, by appreciating the moments, we rebalance the matrix. And that's what it comes down to. So thank you, Haska. Haska's been a regular long-time listener, and I really, really, really appreciate you. Soul Trap Matrix. That's another thing. Maybe I should end it with this note here too. When it's time to go from this matrix, whether it's 20 minutes, 20 years, 2 years, doesn't matter. When it's time to go from this matrix, the way the reincarnation machine works is like this. It should work to where you have a choice. Would you like to play again, or would you like to go back and exit the machine? You should have a choice now. But the way when it was broken, and in the event that it's broken again, remember this, and do with this what you will. But all of your beliefs, all of your attachments, anything like that is going to be used as bait to try to get you to go into that light, to try to get you to go back into the wheel of reincarnation. The exit door is the other way. The exit door is into the darkness. The worst case scenario, you go into the darkness, you can always turn around and go right back to the light if you find nothing. But the exit door is not the light. The light, Life Matrix again, thank you. The light is the soul trap, the reincarnation trap. And with all of these programs, like religious programming, all of that, that's what's used to manifest, to get you to go back in there. Because ultimately, you're a sovereign being. Nothing can be done to you without your consent. You have to consent to go back into that reincarnation wheel. So when you have these belief systems of religion, Jesus, for example, will appear in that light and say, welcome, my child. Come to heaven. You've been such a great soul. Come this way. Step into this machine right here. It's going to be great. You're going to love it. Mind wipe, thrown back into the matrix. It could be loved ones. It could be anything like that. As a matter of fact, Sharia and I have been trying to figure this out. Like, how do we, if we're separated, how do we determine if what we see on the other side, if one of us is waiting for the other one, how do we determine if that other person is real or not? And we're thinking like maybe we can have secret codes or, something like that. But I don't know. There's a symbol that we came up with. And like, if you have that symbol, if she has that symbol on the other side, then I know it's her. If she doesn't have that symbol, I know it's not her. But I think in my case, they're going to try to use her in particular and manifest and say, hey, look, hey, I'm here. Welcome, Chris. Come on, step into this light. Oh no, it's a beautiful light. You're going to love it. It's the best light you've ever had. And believe me, I know lights. And this is the best light. It could be something like that. It can be loved ones. It can be anything like that. But here's the thing. If you want to exit, you got to go backwards, because everything in the Matrix is inverted. They have inverted literally everything. They've taken good, turned it into evil. They've taken evil, turned it into good. It's all inverted. So you've got to think inverted. As a matter of fact, our eyes are even inverted. Did you know that? I learned this a few years ago, but I can't believe I went my entire life without knowing this. Like, our eyes literally are upside down. So it's our brain that turns the image upside down. So the information comes in here. We're actually seeing the world upside down, and our brains just flip it around on us. But everything's inverted. So flip the coin, look at the opposite perspective. But you know what? If you flip the coin enough times, one day you'll realize there's not only two options, but one day it might land on its edge. So on that note, thank you so much for joining me. I hope I haven't gone on too long, but again, thank you for all the kindness in the chat room as well. And we'll do a call-in show where people can call in, hang out, talk about these ideas, but at least this is a show I can point to people and say, all right, if you want to know 101, BTV 101, here it is, all right here laid out. And also some great comments coming in on the screen. I love recording the comments on the screen, because the comments that you guys and the information that you guys and gals out there are injecting into the broadcast are just as important as what I'm saying on this microphone. So I really, really appreciate your energy. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you being here with us on this mission, and we will see you even further beyond the veil. Love you very much.